Welcome back to the channel. Guys, I hope you're having a great day. And so today I want to talk a little bit about um, Superman, the Fantastic Four. How do they go head to head? Like which one comes out the best? Also want to talk a little bit about Jodie's Corner, a content provider that I think we kind of share the same thoughts on a lot of topics concerning Superman, and so that's why I was so surprised to hear his let's say his lack of enthusiasm for a Superman sequel. And so I just want to talk a little bit about that today to try to, um, basically give some thoughts on uh, why, where I think James Gunn can go with this and why I'm on board for it. Whereas I get that a lot of people don't like the James Gunn humor. Um, it's a place for that, and to put that as Superman, it seemingly doesn't work all the time. But I'm gonna um, talk a little bit about why I think it can work in the future and some directions James Gunn could possibly go with this that I think might could possibly work. So first, let's talk about how did these movies compare to one another? Who came out the best, in my opinion? So first of all, Fantastic Four was a darn good movie. It's one of the best Marvel films. Uh, we've seen in a long time. It's definitely a top 10 Marvel film. It might even be a top five. Probably for me, I would say it's in the top five, right? Because there are only a few Marvel movies that I thought were really, really good. You know what I mean? And the other ones were, fair, decent movies, but really, really good movies. Marvel's probably only about five, and perhaps Fantastic Four may just very well be one of them. Of course, I'm going to say like the Winter Soldier. I'm going to say the Black Panther. That's two right there. A lot of people like to say the Avengers, Endgame, and all that stuff. Um, I don't know about that stuff. I probably for me it will probably be like maybe Iron Man. That's number three maybe. Then you'll kind of get into. I surprisingly like the first Thor movie, right? And so the Avengers, Endgame and all that doesn't really rank high on my list for some reason. Now, interesting about the first Thor movie, it was directed by Kenneth Branagh, right, which is a great Shakespearean actor, did a lot of quality stuff, and he brought a. That's probably why the first Thor it's a lot better film than a lot of people think it is, right? So it's in there too. Okay, so it's Thor. It's the okay, it's Thor. It's what I say, Iron Man. It's the Winter Soldier, Black Panther, four, and I probably need one more, right? One more. Maybe that's Fantastic Four, right? Maybe that's Fantastic Four. And I just thought they were all complete movies. They were thorough. But it wasn't perfect, right? So what's I'm going to give two scores, one for Fantastic Four and one for Superman. Now, interesting enough, none of these movies get an 8 or above, unfortunately. I'm a lifelong Superman fan, but I would say Superman gets a 7.9 and Fantastic Four gets a 7.8. So darn good movies, right? Darn, those are good scores. But the issue is, especially with Superman, you're probably wanting it to be an 8 or a 9. And with Fantastic Four, 7 or 8ish. It's so Fantastic Four is perfect for what it is, right? I think it's in a perfect score range. It was a perfect movie in many ways, but there are some reasons I'm going to put out there why I don't think it was better than Superman. Because some people are saying it's better than Superman, the James Gunn Superman. It's I don't think it's even better than the James Gunn Superman. I'm going to explain why that is. Okay, so this is not going to be like a review of the Fantastic Four Superman, right? These movies have been out a while now. Everybody's done those. These are going to be specific points to particular things, right? Like which one's better and why and so on. And why I think Superman 2 sequel kind of sort of does deserve a sequel, the James Gunn version, but with a twist. And we're going to get into that. But, okay. Here are some reasons why I felt Superman was better than Fantastic Four. Number one, one of my litmus tests is, do I experience like that area in the movie theater where the movie slows down and I'm not saying I go to sleep or I'm going to go to sleep, but I think about it, right? Because the movie slows down. You know that feeling you get, guys. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I got that with Fantastic Four, right? I didn't get that with Superman. Even though some people felt Superman was, I think the point was too, Superman had so much to do in such a little area of time that you're always left wanting more, and that's actually a good sign. Even when I'm confused, because I was a little bit confused about Superman, going, well, I don't hate this film, I really like this film, but I don't love it like a great film. And of course, James Gunn's humor is the problem with that. He takes away from that because it puts you in a different space, in a different world, and it's not his humor is probably not as well balanced as it needs to be in a Superman film, right? So that's why I was so confused with Superman, because I think I wanted to say this is a great movie. This is one of the greatest movies ever, and it wasn't going to get there. James Gunn does fantastic movies. He's a great filmmaker. He does interesting things, especially with team-up movies. But to say that his films are like great, error-proof, it wouldn't be accurate for me to say that. Even though I really dig his stuff, I really love his stuff, I don't think he's at that perfection level like maybe what you get with a Christopher Nolan or something like that, right? He's doing comic book movies, right? He's doing straight up comic book movies, and those are going to be hard to be considered overall super great films, many of them, unless they're kind of more grounded as such. But even so, in these Superman movies, there was never a moment of where I felt, let's move on, I'm kind of tired of this. Everything was interesting, and it was always moving along. Like I said, if anything, the Superman movie, it wasn't long enough, right? Now we're gonna talk about some improvements could be made there, that and that's why I'm still rocking with James Gunn, because I know he can make these improvements. The other thing is Fantastic Four, whereas, because it's pretty much a well complete film, right? It's not a lot of complaints. There have been just the standard complaints, and I don't want to get into spoiler territory. I'm hoping that you've seen it already. If not, might want to click out the video. But it's not really a spoiler, because I'm just going to say that you got a very much overpowered Sue Storm, right? A lot of people didn't like that. I wasn't a fan of that. It was kind of, at the end, I felt how they trapped Galactus was kind of lazy a little bit. It's kind of lazy writing a little bit. And so there was just these little tidbit things that I didn't quite like. But now let's get into why Superman deserves a sequel, what some stuff James Gunn could do. And this is where I'm going to address my one of my favorite content producers out there, Jody's Corner, right? I like Jody because Jody, he might be from my generation. He's probably kind of on that Christopher Reeves, Superman Returns type stuff. Whereas a lot of us didn't like Man of Steel, right? Because Man of Steel, we felt it was too dark trying to be Batman. And then in James Gunn's Superman, we kind of get an overcorrection where it's comical and it's super comic booky and so on. It's bright, it's fun, it's a feel-good film and so on, right? And so that's counter opposite, I think, of what the Snyderverse is looking for. And whereas I would call Man of Steel a Elseworld, like an Elseworld version of Superman, to them it's their Superman. To probably me and people like Jody's Corner, the most people still at least agree Christopher Reeves is still the best Superman. Even like the Man of Steel, the Snyderverse type people, I seldom hear them just get up and say, well, he's just better than Christopher Reeves is better than the Donner films, right? So even many of them don't go there with that, right? But so Jody is probably in that area, right, with me. And a lot of the films, I'd say like 90% of the content we agree with, right? Because I don't usually, directly comment content influencers, right? Especially if it's something negative to say. That's just not what I do. But with Jody, I like him. I really like him. So it kind of hit me in the gut a little bit when he said he's not excited about a Superman 2 release. And here's some of the things I want to say to Jody that might, it might be some things to consider, right? Some things he can appreciate. Number one is, remember with this Superman film, there's about 4 hours of film on the cutting room floor, right? It's in edits and deleted scenes and so on, right? Because this is the one thing that I would say to Jody that changed a lot from our generation of going to watch movies or earlier generations. And that is, you can go to the movie theater and you get the intermissions. You watch a movie for 4 hours. You sit up in a movie theater for 3-4 hours, right? And so now the movies don't do that, right? Now they want to cut them down to 2.5 hours, 2:15, stuff like that, right? You're not going to get 3-4 hour movies anymore in the movie theater, right? That's a big problem because even if you go back to the Superman Donner, films, that was a 3-hour movie, right? This Superman needed a four hours. James Gunn Superman needed 3 or 4 hours. Now, cool thing about it is we're probably going to get it later, right? And, director's cuts and stuff like that. You're going to get all that extra footage. And I think when you see it, much like the Snyder cut, you're going to have a very much more appreciation for this film. That's the one thing to consider. The next thing about a sequel where I think Jody could potentially change his mind or should is that, okay, we get that James Gunn doesn't do standalone films well, right? This is not his area. Standalone films is not the area of James Gunn, right? So James Gunn does better on team-up movies. Now, why does that work for me? Let me explain why that works for you guys and why it can work for a sequel. But there are a few caveats I want to add to that. The first being, I wanted a new area to explore with Superman, right? Because the Christopher Reeves movies, the original Superman the movie, it did his origin story, it perfected. And then I loved how Bryan Singer came with Superman Returns, and he said, this is so perfected, we can't touch this. He brought back Marlon Brando, right, as Jor-El. I love that. That's why I love those films so much. And what it does is this is a continuation from those first two Supermans, right? He kind of got rid of the ones then were 3 or 4. Bryan Singer was on the track to a very successful situation. He understood the message. He understood Superman wasn't Batman, even though Batman had come out and was successful. He wasn't going to do a Batman version of it. And he understood the project, right? And, I think where he kind of made a mistake was if it was a continuation, he did just repeat elements of the Superman the movie. It's almost like he just wanted to remake, just redo that movie, but just do it in a modern age with modern, technology with the flying and stuff. Like, it's almost like he just wanted to redo Superman the movie, right? I understand that, right? But his next movie was going to be more action packed. He didn't get a chance to do it because studios cut it out, right? But if he would have done that, I think we would have really enjoyed that. So he's on the right track with that. But the point I'm trying to make to people like Jody's Corner is the thing is, I feel that area of Superman is like a lifelong fan, and how they're just throwing us in the Superman world with all these heroes and people anyway. And when they do make these Superman movies like Man of Steel, we got to see everything redone, retold, the origin story redone on a Krypton with bug-like looking creatures and weird, Prometheus looking creatures and just weird alien, stuff. We gotta see that redone from the original Superman that I thought was done better, and it just goes over and over again. Then we get the Superman Returns, and they're kind of doing the same thing. They got to take you back to his origins a little bit, even though they don't fixate on it, but you still got to do that. And so I was glad to see a Superman didn't have to tell an origin story, a Superman that was already existing, because to me it's the next chapter in Superman. We don't need to see any more origin stories, right? Now here's where James Gunn, I believe, messed up, right? And I kind of know why he probably had to take this direction, because the Superman branding, just like Batman, they tend to bring more money in, right? Because you're getting like your favorite characters, right? So, but it would have been best, I think, of James Gunn would have just already started with the Justice League with a bunch of characters, like, just like 50 characters on screen, kind of like an Avengers Endgame. Just put us there, right? Because the reason I say that, because James Gunn is perfect for doing those kind of films like he did with Marvel. So he didn't need to start going one character at a time, do Superman, do Batman. No, if I could talk to James Gunn, I'd say, play to your strengths. Just jump into the Justice League, the Hall of Justice and all that stuff, like the cartoon Super Friends, right? And he would nail that and then if I was James Gunn, because he's actually way better with like B-list superheroes, like what he does with Peacemaker and all that stuff. He would have done great just to do that, and then have Superman come in as the big guns to handle big threats. Like, I would have took time with doing a superhero team up with a lot of different characters, even like characters we know who always were interested in that didn't get a lot of screen time. Those kind of people. The Green Arrow, all those people, it all mixed together. I would just, if James Gunn could just threw us in a row, I think that would have worked, because he'd have been able to do that, right? So those are the points I'm making to Jody, that the reason I think it's a good idea to continue with this world, or maybe we don't need to keep rebooting Superman and re-rolling him. It's just been done too many times. Unless James Gunn, he has a very interesting talent for large-scale world building. What I'm suggesting is this particular Superman continues on, but he doesn't really need his own sequels. If he gets one and it's done like this, and it's a lot more elements, and it's more the heroes, new heroes we haven't seen before. Maybe it's Brainiac he's fighting or something like that. I'm fine with that too. It could be called Superman 2. It doesn't really matter, because I know what it is. I know really what it is Super Friends. It's Superman and Super Friends. And I think James Gunn can nail that type of film. And really, if you really look at it, that's basically what we're getting, right? We're getting Superman, Super Friends. A lot of us were as interested in the characters that inhabited James Gunn Superman as Superman himself. And there was nothing wrong with this Superman. This Superman, the David Corenswet Superman, he can actually fit in the Donner films. He can fit in the, in the Man of Steel realm, all these realms, because not only he's a good actor, but he embodies the idea of a serious Superman, like emotional Superman, how he was acting in those scenes with Lex Luthor. And, he was telling them, I'm just a human just like you. He can go there, right? So there's nothing wrong with the Superman. It's just the writing in the film itself. But I would also tell someone like Jody's Corner to watch Peacemaker, Creatures Commander, which I'm sure he does. I think he liked those films. And try to envision Superman in those worlds with Peacemaker as he is. And when you do that, you have a very more broader view of Superman. I think it would be correct to say that these aren't really per se Superman films, right? To be honest, as much as I love Superman, I want to see Superman go out into the cosmos. I do want to see him interact. I know James Gunn could create these fantastical worlds where he could do that. And I want to see the next chapter of Superman, something I haven't seen before. We always see Superman on Earth. We always say Superman fighting with Lex Luthor. But there's 28 known galaxies, according to the Kryptonians out there. And to get Superman out in these different worlds, battle worlds, and all this stuff, these different places, fighting Lobo out in space, and Supergirl's moving around space in her upcoming film, you're going to have somebody who can create these fantastical worlds with a bulk of characters. I just don't think that would have been something Zack Snyder could do. I don't know if anybody could do that, right? This is something that the Marvel formula would need over at DC, and I think they nailed that. But that's all I want to say in this particular video. If you didn't dig the film, I think, again, it has a lot to do with just not enough material. It is enough material, but they can't show it in films anymore. I think when you guys see something like a director's cut for Superman, it's going to increase by 50% the quality of it and what you're seeing, right? Because remember, it's probably like 4 hours of it, right? That means it's like about 2 hours of missing content, right, in this film. And then my next thing would be, think of it like Super Friends, right? Instead of looking at like, oh, another Superman movie I'm not excited to see, look at it like a Super Friends movie that you're excited to see, that's going to contain Superman interacting with even more of those DC characters. Because remember, even if you go back to like the Justice League Unlimited, that space station they're on, the Watchtower, it's just tons. It's inhabited by DC heroes, right? Remember that, and twice as many villains, right? So James Gunn has his whole play with that, but the next step again would be to get all these interested people on screen at once, and that's an area Superman has never went into before, and it would definitely take somebody who has a incredible mind to do that. And from what I've seen with James Gunn, the Suicide Squad, Creatures Commandos, Guardians, all this stuff that he's been able to do, these very interesting films, I find myself invested in. I never get bored in a James Gunn film. I never, like with Fantastic Four, that's one reason Fantastic Four to me lost out Superman. There were parts of Fantastic Four that I was kind of, a little bit bored. Let's slowing down. Did that mean it was a great film? It was a great film. It was a great film. It's almost a perfect film for a Marvel film, but just not on the level of Superman. And that's hard to do. Fantastic Four is not on the level of Superman. But that's all I want to say in this video. Guys, if you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel. Till next time, as always, take care of yourselves and each other.